All right, guys, so the last thing that you want when you're turning a pen is to get a blowout. It is the worst when that happens, and I've found that it tends to happen more often with acrylic blanks, and I've also found that one way to reduce the amount of blowouts that you get when you're turning acrylic pens is to get a better glue bond between the tube and the blank. And so in this video, I'm going to kind of walk you guys through how I glue tubes in. It's a little different than most people do it, I think, and I'm going to kind of explain why I do it the way that I do it. I kind of did a little investigating a couple of years ago when I got a few blowouts, and this is kind of the process that I've come up with to try to improve that bond between the acrylic blank and a tube, basically. So hopefully this will help you guys reduce the number of blowouts that you get, and you'll be a lot happier turning pens in your shop. So let's get started. So like I said, a couple of years ago, I kind of started investigating. I got a couple of blowouts on acrylic blanks that I was turning, and I, for the life of me, could not figure out what I did wrong. And really, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, it occurred in every instance when, like at the end, it was the material had gotten turned way down. I was nearing the end, the finish line, everything was going fine until just a chunk blew out on me, and I'm like, what is going on? So I started really investigating it, and when I looked at the tubes and the parts, you know, if I could find the pieces that ripped off, what I found was in every instance there was no glue. So obviously this piece of the blank was not being held down. And so I started really thinking about it, and I think what's happening is you're spinning the blank at high speeds. It's got some forces being applied, and you know, once you turn that blank down, there's not much material holding it. It's a little bit kind of, you know, acrylic blanks, once they're an 1/8 inch or less, you know, thin, they're kind of wobbly. They can move. And so you start cutting, the blank can warp, the tool can grab into it at that point, and then it'll just rip it out once it's reached a limit of not moving anymore. So that's what I think is going on. It's the most plausible explanation that I can come up with. And so I decided that I'm going to really try and figure out a way to make sure that I'm getting glue, you know, all the way around the tube from end to end on every acrylic blank. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a blank, I'm going to get a tube, and I'm going to walk you guys through step by step, bring the cameras in here, get some good shots of everything, explain what I'm doing, and show you, you know, how I do it. I do it a very specific way, and like I said, so far it's been a couple years now, and it's pretty much eliminated the problem of blowouts for me with acrylic blanks. So let me get the cameras in here, get all set up, and we will get started. All right, guys, so the first thing I wanted to do is just cover the things that I use to glue tubes in. So we got all of our little tools and supplies here. So got our blank, got our tube, and I use an insertion tool, not only to insert the tube in there, but it also is just a convenient way to kind of just hold the tube and then put it on the side, and it's easy to grab. I got some denatured alcohol to clean the tube off with, 180 grit sandpaper to scuff the tube up with. I have some wax. This is just a sheet of wax, and what I use that for is I press a piece into the leading hole of the tube, and when you're inserting it, that will keep glue from getting on the inside of the tube, which is a total pain. So this works pretty good. There's a couple other ways you can do that. I've seen people use like Play-Doh and plumber's putty and all kinds of different stuff, so I just like the wax. It's pretty simple. We have some gloves because I don't like getting CA glue all over my fingers. I have this box, and all it does is catch excess glue. The way that I do things, it's a little bit messier than normal, so I just kind of use that as a way to get all of the CA in one place. Then we have our CA glues, and I use two different types of CA glue. The first one is thick, and I apply that to the tube. Mainly the reason I use thick on the tube is because I do this first, and it has a longer open time. That's the main reason. It is a little thicker, but CA glue is really not a gap-filling glue for the most part, so it's not really specifically to fill gaps. It's more just it has a longer open time. The other one I use is a thin, and it's a fast-setting glue. I don't really have any preference on the thick, the brand. I do like this Mercury. It works fine, so that's what I use, but I do have preferences. I think there are a couple of the thins that seem to work better, and Starbond, let's see, they call it Super Fast Thin. This works really well, I find, as well as Easy Bond they have two different types of thins. The thinner viscosity thin, it's a red label, That one works pretty good, but I'm having trouble finding any place to easily buy it. So I found Starbond on Amazon, and it's working good too. So those are the tools and things that I use. Now I'm going to kind of go through, like I said, step by step, go through the motions of putting the tubes in, and I'm going to explain kind of why I do the things the way that I do them. All right, so the first thing, I got my gloves on, and now we're going to prep the tube. So first thing I do to it is with the 180 grit sandpaper, I scuff it up real good. Then I'm going to take my wax sheet and I'm going to press the tube down on there and get a little disc that's going to cover that hole in there. Now, when you do that, a little bit of wax residue gets on the tube, and so that's actually part of the reason why I use some denatured alcohol. I just put it on a paper towel there and just wipe off, make sure I get that wax part off. But it's also just a good idea to clean off tubes before you're gluing them. It'll give you a better glue bond, just to, making sure that there's no contaminants or oils or anything on that tube. So now that we got all those things, let's get these guys out of the way. The next step is I'm going to take I'm going to get my tube mounted on the little tool thing there. And I'm going to take my thick CA, apply a little bit to the tube, and I'm going to take a popsicle stick, and I'm actually going to work it in and make sure that every part of this tube has glue on it. We got our tube glued nice and well. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to stick my... I'm pretty much done. A lot of times I'll be gluing multiple tubes up, so I kind of save the stick, but in this case we're done with the stick. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my thin, and on the thin bottle there's a kind of a long tube. I get these at Woodturner's Wonders, and I think it's like $1 for a pack of 30, and they work great. It allows you to really get into that tube and get the entire surface coated basically. Now, one thing I want to stop and kind of mention about the thin, why I use the thin CA. A lot of the blanks that I turn have embedded objects in them, and using a thin CA, it's going to penetrate in and just make sure if there's any gaps between the resin and the materials, it's going to kind of fill those and just add a little bit of strength to that bond. But in the case of just acrylics, it's just nice because you can kind of easily douse the inside. So I'm just going to squirt, and I'm going to use, I'm going to kind of waste a little bit, but I'd much rather waste a little bit of CA glue than, not get that entire surface covered. Once I have that doused on the inside, then I'm going to take my insertion tool, and it's being a pain today, and I'm going to get my blank in there. Now I'm kind of spinning it around in there and doing all that, and I think I just glued the blank to my finger, but it's kind of a messy situation, but there's a lot of glue, and I think that I've gotten it on both surfaces equally. And then after that, I just put it aside, either put it down in here. Usually I kind of just put it on a piece of paper, clean off the blank a little bit, and just kind of put it aside and let it sit. Now, the last thing that I think is absolutely crucial before you start, trimming the ends and turning your blank, put the blank aside and let that glue cure. I want to make sure everybody understands there's a difference between set time and cure time, and almost every glue is going to have, a set time. So thin CA sets up in like 15 seconds, I think, is probably what the set time is for this stuff. That isn't cured. It's not fully cured for like 24 hours. So make sure you read the directions of your, whatever glue you're using. Read the directions, find out what it says the full cure is. And you want to wait until it has fully cured because you're going to get a better bond that way. So if you start turning it right away, that bond is definitely going to be weaker than if you wait 24 hours. So make sure you do that. I know that a lot of these things are patience. You really got to hone the patience with some turning things, let that blank cure and you're going to be a lot better off. So the last thing I wanted to cover is if after you've glued your tube in and squared up the blank, the ends, If you're looking at the end and you notice that there's a gap between the blank and the tube, you need to fill that before you turn it, because that is exactly what we were trying to, avoid. And it's not the gluing method, it's actually the drilling. For some reason the drill bit wandered, or the drill press is off a little bit and the hole got a little bit oversized. That's what's happening there. You need to make sure that the ends especially are glued, entirely to the tube. So I'm actually looking at this blank that we just glued together, and for some reason it's just a full acrylic blank, but for some reason my hole in this blank was elongated, I think. So I'm going to wait overnight. I'm going to trim up the ends, and when we come back on camera here, I'm going to kind of walk you through how I fix those gaps. And it's pretty simple, nothing to it really, but I'll just kind of show you how I kind of quickly take care of that before I turn it. All right, now to fill these, first thing I'm going to do is put in a silicone plug. That way I don't get glue in the inside. Then I'm going to take my thin CA and I'm just going to kind of drizzle it down. What I want is for that glue to seep down into whatever crack. Now I like to put something on the bottom underneath, just in case the glue decides to go all the way through. You don't glue your blank to the table basically. But I'm going to add a little bit more. Just try and get that glue to kind of fill down into that little gap there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit it with some accelerator. Because what I want to do is I want to build up the CA glue, and I don't really want to take a lot of time. So hit it with the activator, and then the next thing I'm going to do is let that kind of cure for a few minutes. I usually do this step fairly quick. I don't wait 24 hours and all that. I just want to kind of do a quick fix. But what I'm going to do is barrel trim that, smooth it out, and then see where we're at. If I need to add more, I'm going to add some more thin CA. Alright, so now that I've trimmed it back again, I actually think we got it filled. But I think I'm going to give it one more application just to make sure. Now we got that end fully solid. So we got our blank fixed. There should be no problems with gaps or glue bond issues at all. This thing should turn like a charm. So I hope that this video, all the the glue method and all the little tips and tricks help you guys out. Hopefully it'll reduce the blowouts and get you better results pen turning. So if you guys have any gluing tips or tricks or things that'll reduce blowouts, I'd love to hear down in the comments below. Anything that we can all kind of share will, hopefully get all of us better at pen turning and reduce those blowouts. So I'd love to hear from you guys. So if you're new to the channel, we do all kinds of resin casting projects, tutorials, and experiments around here. Usually turning focused, but sometimes we step outside of the turning world and just do something for fun. So if you're into that, definitely hit that subscribe button. And till next time, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.